With the quick sip mud, just use fresh water. We're just gonna mix it pretty thick. We're gonna do a nice tight first coat, let that set up, slick it out. Do a second coat, let it set up, slick it out. Then we're gonna do a spray knockdown texture. But your first coat mud, just make it pretty thick, like a real heavy pancake batter. Nice and creamy, perfect mix up. You're gonna have to wash out your tools in your bucket. Whenever I have water available, I will use a washout area. You have to wash out your tools. When you're using hot muds, this is a 5-minute mud. Like you seen earlier, I mixed a pan of it. I used what was left over. I always keep my 5-minute in here. I filled up my bucket, that was leftover. 5-gallon bucket like this will hold about 2 bags of this, so I like to keep it in the buckets. I like to only use 5-minute for patchwork. There's 20-minute, 40-minute, 90-minute out there, but for these small jobs I always stick to the 5-minute. There's other brands out there. This is the stuff I like to use. Some are not better than others. It's just what I use. It's more professional grade. I never had any issues on jobs with it. Some stuff that they sell at the big box stores, that stuff is strong. So say the stuff you buy at the big box store, at 5 minutes setup time, it sets up like a rock. This stuff you can kind of manipulate it so it doesn't just turn rock hard right at the 5-minute mark. It slowly sets up. It doesn't just set up all at once like the other stuff. That's why I like to use it. But whatever you can get. Like I said, most of my videos, if you haven't done mudding before, just stick to joint compounds. Joint compounds you'll have to let dry overnight, then sand them, then second coat, then sand, then do another coat. These hot muds are just going to let it set up. After I get everything coated, I come out and wash my tools, basically give it some time to start setting up. Slick out technique's always the same. You use a nice clean 6-inch knife, straight 6-inch knife, and a damp sponge. We're going to slick it out. That's the next step process. We're going to let it set up another minute or so, then we're going to go inside and slick it out. This is a spray texture, so I'm going to have to use a spray rig, do a spray knockdown on a patch. The patch was just access to the bathtub. I guess the pipe was leaking, so the plumber had to open up the pipe and repair it. But let's go ahead and go in there and slick it out. With these hot muds, you have to slick it out. I know on here it says easy sanding. You do not sand hot muds. You slick them out. This is the technique I'm going to show you right now, is what you do with all hot muds. 5, 10, 20, 40, 90-minute, whatever hot muds you use, you have to slick it out. This next step I'm going to do is called slicking out, and you have to do it on hot muds before they set up. So let's go ahead and slick out this hot mud. You see it's still damp, so let's give it a couple more minutes. Sometimes on these glossy painted walls, the hot muds take a little longer to set up, but we need to let this dry a little more. Give it a couple more minutes. While we're letting it dry, let's go set up for our texture spray knockdown. Get that set up and ready to go. Muds don't like to set up on glossy painted walls. So that's the only problem with using hot muds on repair work. Whenever you do patches on a glossy painted wall, it takes a little extra time to set up. No worries. In the meantime, we're just going to use our time efficiently. Get the sprayer ready, mix up our texture, which is a joint compound, get everything ready for the spray knockdown setup. Let's go ahead and get this ready. That way we're not wasting time. For a little patch like this, you don't need such an aggressive air compressor. This is like a go-to size. It's not really the gallons or the PSI. It's more of this, the SCFM. Basically, that's the motor power. So when you're spraying, you don't lose a lot of pressure. The motor kind of keeps up with the air demand. The higher the SCFM, of course, the stronger the motor, the more air output that the motor will create. But this is basically a medium-sized one. An air compressor like this can do maybe even a 10-sheet job, 10 sheets of sheetrock. Once you get bigger than that, you're going to need a bigger air compressor. If you're doing stuff overhead, you're going to need a heavier air compressor. Everybody asks, well, what PSI do you spray at? I just open it up all the way, and then I control the pressure with the on and off switch here on the hopper. So compressor, full PSI, control the pressure with your throttle on your hopper. But I basically got this one, I think Harbor Freight or so, for less than a couple $100. A small patch like I'm doing in there, a little 2x2 patch, you can use just a small air compressor. But this is my go-to because it can pretty much handle most of the jobs that I do, because I am a drywall repairer. So sometimes I have to do a 2x2 patch up to a 4 or 5 sheet job, but this mostly can handle most jobs that are thrown my way. It's heavier to carry in, that's why I like this bracket. A little bigger than this, then it kind of breaks your back moving around, but I just like to use this. And then I use a 25-foot hose. It's manageable. A 50-foot hose is too much. It's easier to have two 25-foot hoses if you need to reach. But basic setup like this is for spray textures. Spray knockdown, splatter, orange peel, popcorn ceilings, most of the old spray textures from the 60s, 70s, 80s. They even do it in the 90s and early 2000s, but it's mostly done before 2000. If it's done after the year 2000, then it was like an old builder track home or something like that that did the spray knockdowns, and that's kind of what this is. This house is like a 2000. It still has a spray texture from the 70s. Let's go ahead and get this ready. I think we're going to take this in now and get it plugged in, get the air pressure going, and go check on our wet patch. I think it's probably dry by now, setting up. So let's go ahead and check on our first coat and get that all slicked out while we get this air compressor set up. And it's set up good enough. Slick it. We're just gonna mix it like a, not a heavy pancake batter, just kind of like a regular pancake batter, I guess. Nice and creamy, mix it thoroughly. It got to be thorough, no clumps in it. Notice I added a little bit more water because I need a little thinner than my first coat. Every coat needs to be thinner than the prior coat, just a little bit. It makes the mud go on easier with the knife, makes a perfect patch. Let's go ahead and do a tight second coat in this patch. Check on it. Always clean out your pans and knives after you're done coating. Don't get distracted with something else. Just wash your tools. Like I showed you earlier, this is my brand new knife. These knives, they're not expensive. $10, $15 for a decent name brand knife. But it sucks having to buy new tools every time you do a project. Keep the tools clean, they'll last a long time. Most of my tools, they just have to get replaced because they don't last like they used to. They end up rusting out, get thrown around, get too bent. But I want my knives to last me for a long time, everyday use. A good drywall knife should last you at least 6 months. Knives used to last years, but now I'll be surprised if I get 6 months use. 12-inch knife, this is my go-to knife. Some guys like to use a 14. 12, 14, people like these because they coat really good. You make stuff do a nice coat. Some guys like to carry 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 24-inch knives. Look, I got a nice 18-inch pan, a 6-inch knife, and a 12-inch coating knife. That's my go-to for knives. I have other knives in the toolbox if I need it, like smaller knives, like a 3-inch, 4-inch, 1-inch knife, or a big 20-inch texture knife. But these are all you need, basic tools. Just a pan, 6-inch, and a 12-inch knife. Even a 14-inch pan would do. I like the 18-inch pans if you can find them because I can mix more hot mud coating. But we're done with the hot muds, so let's go ahead and put the hot mud away. Like all my other videos, I always have my joint compounds. Bucket of joint compound here will last me a good work week with just doing patchwork. Cap it off. I take the lid off and the water on top. I'm going to have to dump the water on top, dump it out, and then mix it up with my hand stomper. So let's go ahead and mix up the mud, joint compounds. That way we can use it for texture. Thickness, consistency, heavy pancake batter consistency with joint compounds. Most muds are heavy pancake batter. Sometimes it's easier to be on the heavy side than the thin side. We're using joint compounds with spray textures. So let's go ahead and get the texture ready in this bucket so we're prepped up for the next step. Hand mixer. I use a hand mixer because I don't want to pull out a drill, stuff like that, a bunch of tools. Hand mixers are good, a little more energy, effort, but nothing to it. We call it a potato masher. Mix it up. You know, if you have a nice work area, workstation, and you got mixers and paddles and 1/2-inch drills set up, then you can use this. This one fits on my cordless drill because this got worn down, so it fits on my 3/8 drill. It's meant to be on a 1/2-inch drill, but it still fits on my 3/8 cordless drill, so sometimes I'll whip it up if it needs extra mixing, but it's mixed pretty well. I just keep the lid on it. I don't want stuff to fall in it. I don't want the sun to dry it out and create a crusty layer on top. So basically we'll just need a hopper load. Hoppers. This hopper was sitting in my truck for a while, and there's some WD-40 in it, so I'm gonna rinse out my hopper before I use it. So let's go ahead and clean out the hopper. If your hopper's been stored in the garage for a while or in your work truck like mine has, it's gonna get full of dirt, and I think I put WD-40 on it before I stored it, so you want to get all that oil and all that debris out of there before you put fresh mud in it. Quick rinse is all it needs. And I usually just put the hopper upside down for a few minutes while I'm doing my next step, get all the water out of there. But the next step was slicking out. The second coat had to set up just like the first coat, so now we're going to need a sponge and a 6-inch knife. We're going to slick out the second coat. You have to slick it out before you texture. So let's go ahead and slick out the second. Second coat's all slicked out. We're just gonna let it set up another minute or so. It's done on a semi-gloss painted wall, so it takes a little longer for it to set up. You don't want to spray joint compounds on wet coated muds if possible, especially in a spray knockdown. So we're just gonna let it set up enough, and then we're going to get some joint compound in our hopper, and we're going to go spray it and knock it down. Basically, you're asked when should I texture? When would I know after coating it when it'd be ready for texture? Well, if you paint the patch now, would it be perfectly smooth, perfect patch under paint? Yes, then it's ready for texture. If I paint the patch right now and it still looks rough and ugly and you see imperfections, then it's not ready for texture. It's going to need another coat. So basically, the texture is just a cosmetic finish. It goes over a smooth, perfect sheetrock, smooth, perfect patch. The texture doesn't hide your imperfection, doesn't hide your mistakes. The coat job has to be done correctly, nice smooth patch, feathered edges before you do any type of texture. No matter what texture design you have, the patch has to be perfectly smooth for your texture design. If your texture design is smooth, spray, knockdowns, skip trowel, whatever the finish is in your region, the patch has to be perfectly smooth before you do the final texture step process. But we're just going to let that set up. Put a little bit of mud in my hopper. I don't need much. We're just doing a patch. That's more than enough. I just keep the bucket out, so if there's extra mud in my hopper. Stands, everybody likes these hopper stands. I just like to wedge it in, but look at this. I'll just put it in my bucket. It'll be there when I need it. But we're just gonna let this set up. I'm gonna check my email and stuff. No hurry, I'm gonna let this patch set up thoroughly before we do a spray texture. So time to take a break. Smoke them if you got them. That patch is set up good enough. Hopper with mud, a nice clean 6-inch knife. I use 6-inch knife, nice straight 6-inch knife for knocking down small jobs. Clean sponge, that way I can take the excess mud off my 6-inch knife as I'm knocking it down. Nice damp knife too, it helps glide over small patches. We're trying to blend in patches, so no need to use a big knife. You'll see guys using these big knives, but if you look at a big knife, you'll see that there's a curvature to the knife. Well, you go knocking down with that curvature, you're gonna have a flat spot where that curve in the knife is. So guys that knock down with big knives, hey, more power to them. Maybe on brand new sheetrock, but on patch jobs I use a 6-inch knife. Hopper with joint compound, nice and thick mud like a heavy pancake batter. Medium tip on the hopper. Medium tip is usually your go-to on most of your textures, so I always keep the medium tip. Out of the 3 tips, you have a small, medium, and large. I always use a medium tip for most of the textures. But let's go ahead and go in there and spray the patch. I'm going to spray it like a splatter texture. After I get it all sprayed, splattered out, then we turn around and knock it down. That's why it's called knockdown, because you trowel it down with the knife after you do the splatter texture. So let's go ahead and do this. Yeah, just lightly knock it down with the 6-inch knife. There's no pressure being pushed on it, as you watch on the video. My mud bucket, take my lid off. Any extra mud, we just dump it in there. Reuse it for the next. We don't want to waste materials. And then we'll clean up everything, put the tools away. Basically with the spray knockdown with the joint compounds have to dry overnight. Anytime tomorrow thereafter you can sand it, then primer, then paint. You always have to sand, you always have to primer and paint most textures. All textures need primer, not all things. So I give my client my business card, collect my money, and that's pretty much the process of these patch jobs. We make it look easy, work with mud all the time. You could try it yourself, but when in doubt, always hire a professional. Professionals make stuff look easy. I know we waste a lot of water, but hey, you got to clean up your tools when you're done with them, especially these hoppers. These hoppers will last forever, but you got to clean them up right when you're done using them. You can't just put it to the side and forget about it. Fresh water. I always dump out my old water from the previous job, my new job that I'm going to next, my second job. Fresh water ready to go. I like the 25-foot hose because I can fit it inside my hopper to get it out of the way. I have limited truck room in my little work truck. Strainer I use for orange peels. I strain my mud, but I keep all that in the way. Keep it out of the way. I've had enclosed trailers. I've had big trucks. They're all a pain in the butt. Especially when you're driving all over several cities a day, going to 2 or 3 jobs, doing estimates. I like this little pickup truck. Cap my mud, I clean the sides of my bucket, just enough water to cover the top, put the lid on it. My cap texture is ready for the next job. Tools put away, everything's put away. Alright, let's go talk to the homeowner on the next steps they need to do with the patch, and that's pretty much it for this job. Hey, thanks for watching.